Fernando here. Welcome to the latest B-Ration, our bonus content series. Our next full episode of the podcast is going to be released June 4th. That's 2 days before the 82nd anniversary of the D-Day landings back in 1944. It features a story of a man who was considered an enemy alien. He was actually born in Germany, but he went on to become an infantry scout who dragged a seriously wounded man all the way to safety on the Western Front. Don't miss this one. The man's name, Walter G. Denise. And in his oral history, there's an especially striking section where he describes what happens when a tank burns. He says, "We saw several of them on fire. The batteries in them, the lead melts in those, and the lead melts in the shells, and it pours out the bottom of the tank. That's how hot it gets in there. And while they're burning, you hear the tick, 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 and the boom, boom all the time while this tank is burning up. And the guys that are in there, you don't know whether they're in there or not, because if they try to get out through the upper hatch, they're going to get popped off by the enemy. If they try to come out the lower hatch, they might be down on the ground. They can't get under. They can't get out from under the tank. They either die in there or they get out as quickly as they can." The popular sense is that working in an American tank on the Western Front of World War II was especially dangerous. So dangerous that you may hear the M4 Sherman referred to as a death trap. But is that nickname fair? I would say it's more complicated than that. There was an analysis done of 898 U.S. First Army tank losses, and it found an average of 0.98 crew casualties per knocked out tank. So in other words, if you're looking at a Sherman tank, you got a 5-man crew. That means if your tank is knocked out, you're likely going to lose one crew member. Now, obviously that's a tragedy, but it's not necessarily a death trap. Now, when you compare a Sherman tank to the Soviet T-34, another popular tank, the fatality rate for Sherman crews was 24.6%. For the T-34, it was 28%. So you were more likely to be killed as a T-34 crewman than you were as a Sherman crewman. Now, it's true that Sherman tanks got the reputation of burning up when they got hit. They were nicknamed Ronsons after the cigarette lighter. A misconception about this is that they burned up because of the gasoline. That wasn't the case. They burned up generally because of the ammunition catching fire. So Shermans had a burn rate earlier in the war of 60 to 80%, which of course is pretty bad. But they started storing the ammunition in a different way, a safer way, and that dropped the burn rate to between 10 and 15%. So it reduced the chance of your tank burning up drastically. Now, lest I paint too rosy a picture for Sherman crews in World War II, there's a book called Death Traps by Belton Cooper, and it claims the 3rd Armored Division started with 232 tanks and saw 648 completely destroyed and another 700 knocked out and repaired. So that's a loss rate of 580%. So was it dangerous to be a Sherman crewman? You better believe it. Were they death traps? Not necessarily. If you want to dig deeper, I've got some resources listed in the show notes if you want to check them out. Thanks for listening, and remember to review the podcast. It really helps. Thanks again.